What's going on, everybody? Thanks for tuning in to another episode of California Underground. I'm here again with Natalie, who I always enjoy having conversations with because all of a sudden it just seems like the narrative's changing. Something's changing in the air. And I reached out to Natalie and I was like, I feel like there's a lot changing. I feel like we should talk about like why is everyone all of a sudden changing their mind on what's going on with Maestro and Osiris, and why is it all of a sudden everything I feel like you and I even talked about maybe a year or so ago is now all of a
Mhm.
sudden just becoming commonplace and everything is hunky dory. We're all fine. Everything's moving forward. So, first off, Natalie, how are you doing? Welcome back.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. So let's get your first initial thoughts. Why do you think everybody is changing their tune? And then I'll share, I think, the biggest reason why everyone's changing their tune.
I would guess that it has something to do with polling numbers, with Biden being at a lower approval rating than Trump was at this time in his presidency, and probably with Biden's State of the Union address in early March.
So are you
Um,
talking about these poll numbers?
yep. Uh, it's hard for me to see on my screen, but
It's 56 disapprove and 34 approve. So only
yeah, that would be
34%.
those would be the ones. Yeah.
Those would be the one. And that's overall. And even if you pull out independents, it
Mhm.
moves up to only 22% of independents approve of Joe Biden's job right now, his job
Yeah.
handling.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, that would be my guess.
I
And
would
also the
say,
lockdowns were all Trump's fault, according to Jen Psaki. So,
yeah,
the
I
entire
saw that.
yeah.
All of a sudden, she's like, they asked her, they tried to press her on it, and they were like, what's your thoughts on this John Hopkins study? And she's like, well, that wasn't us. We didn't do
Mhm.
that. And we don't plan on doing lockdowns. And they're like, oh, so do you want to say that like lockdowns are a bad idea? And they were basically like, well, we wouldn't go that far as saying that lockdowns are a bad thing. So
Yep.
it was it was a non-answer from the Saki bomb. That they didn't say lockdowns were bad and that they would never do them. They just want to be like, well, we didn't do them, so I guess it's really not our fault.
Right. And lastly, I would add probably what's going on in Canada. I think there's a fear of that coming here. Um, I don't think Biden would be able to fight it in the way that Trudeau is, because Biden has an image to protect that is more working class. He would like folks to believe than maybe Trudeau is seems to folks. So
Yeah, I keep hearing this rumor about a truck convoy to stop the Super Bowl, and we're like what 2 days away from the Super Bowl, so I haven't really heard anything substantial happen um,
I
regarding
think
that.
the Department of Homeland Security is very concerned about it, though. So
Yeah, I would say that they're probably already got their FBI informants hanging out at truck stops, being like, "Hello, fellow truckers, what are we doing?
yeah,
Who's
I've
headed
heard
to
about
the
the
Super
Super
Bowl?"
Bowl. I don't know about that, but I have heard also about when people trying to start them up here, and I would say do it, go for it,
So,
and
what's your
all the
thought
way.
on the Super Bowl? And we'll start there. 2 weeks ago, yeah, it was 2 weeks ago, was the NFC Championship game, and we saw Newsom without a mask. We saw Garcetti holding his breath for the entire game. We saw Mayor London Breed feeling the spirit. She was out there. Um, what were your thoughts when you saw those images of all these elites? Not even the celebrities, because whatever, the celebrities are going to do what they want anyway. We'll talk about the Oscars in a little bit. But what were your thoughts when you saw those pictures that they were just not wearing masks in SoFi Stadium?
Sadly, not at all surprising. Um, and it's funny because I think they were violating at least like 3 mask mandates, because the state of California has a mask mandate right now for indoor
Mhm.
events, and then there's a mask mandate for mega events, regardless of whether they're indoor or outdoor. And then SoFi Stadium has a mask mandate. And as far
Mhm.
as I know, unless they've changed it, on Sunday, they're going to ask, 2-year-olds to mask up and fans as young as 5 to show a vaccine card or proof of a negative test. So, and also be masked, of course. So it's I don't know why it's outrageous. It's infuriating, but it's also not the first time it's happened. And I have nothing to say about anybody's health or anything like that. But if Magic Johnson can make a personal risk assessment,
Hmm.
given his own situation and then the situation he's in, can't we all make a personal risk assessment?
Yeah. And for someone who I guess he's technically immunocompromised, he
Yes.
made his own decision as to I'm going to go to a football game and not wear a mask and pal around with everybody and be fine with it. I guess
Yeah.
that's okay for him, and
Hmm.
as well as the politicians who are not very sensitive to someone who is immunocompromised, which
No.
is what they've been telling all of us to do, which is we have to do it because you never know who's immunocompromised or who's vulnerable to this.
Right. Yeah. And that's all I've been asking for. That's all we've all been asking for is for 2 years to be able to make that assessment, just like Magic Johnson should be able to do. So,
Yeah, absolutely. And someone in the chat just said that they are helping organize that there will be a U.S. convoy. So um, if the DHS or FBI is watching right now or listening, I had no part in it. So I will not accept any subpoenas as being a part of this. So it's Leanna Wen, or I think is that her name? I can't
yes.
remember. Yeah,
Mhm.
she's been the most ardent totalitarian on COVID stuff this whole time. Would you agree with that statement?
I would. Yes.
She's basically been she famously said, "We have to make life as uncomfortable as possible for the
Yes.
unvaccinated."
She loves the
Uh,
carrot and the stick approach. She's
loves the
spoken about
carrot
that.
and the stick.
Yes.
She's
Yeah.
all about the carrot and the stick approach. And now all of a sudden she sounds like Ron DeSantis in this little it's almost like you look at her and go, "Is this the same person who was basically saying like we should lock everybody away, make it as comfortable as possible, like they shouldn't be a part of society, they should be
Mhm.
second class citizens." Now all of a sudden she's completely changed her tune.
Yeah.
So let's watch the clip, and I'm sure a lot of people have seen it, but if you haven't seen it, this is CNN's medical expert. I don't know why I put quotes because
I
she's
can't
more like the
imagine.
totalitarian expert, um, talking about where should we be going from here. So here we go.
Do you agree with the move?
I do. There was and is a time and place for pandemic restrictions, but when they were put in, it was always
Oh, now they heard us talking about her.
We finally got what we've been waiting to hear, and it
with the understanding
suffers.
that they would be removed as soon as we can. And in this case, circumstances have changed. Case counts are declining. Also, the science has changed. We know that vaccines protect very well against Omicron, which is the dominant variant. Everyone 5 and older have widespread access to vaccines. And we also know about one-way masking, the idea that even if other people around you are not wearing masks, if you wear a high-quality mask, that also protects you, the wearer, too. And so in this case, I'm not saying, I don't think
Okay, I got to pause it right there because I was under the impression my mask or your mask does not work
Mm-mm.
unless I wear a mask, correct?
Yes, similar to my vaccine.
So now Dr. Leanna Wen is saying one-way masking is the way to protect yourself. You can wear a mask and protect yourself and not worry about what other people are doing. And that's okay. But before it was we all have to wear a mask because unless you're wearing a mask and I'm wearing a mask, it doesn't work. So
Yeah. I want to find the scientist who just discovered one-way masking because it's been a real challenge being unmasked in Los Angeles for the last 2 years, continuing right up into this day, where folks in the grocery store will say something to me. But apparently, one-way masking, we've discovered 2 years into this, It works. And she makes no mention of what mask you're using, of course. And to be fair, this whole idea of my mask protects you and yours protects me, which I question, but it was also when the PPP was in short supply, I guess, right? Or the PPE.
Yeah.
But now everyone has access to an N95 or a KN95. So legitimately, your mask does protect you, and you can wear that mask, which is very uncomfortable from what I understand. But
Mhm.
it's certainly going to protect you. So I don't even know why we're still talking about masks. And it sounds like one-way masking would also work for children in school, but I don't know if the science has gotten that far yet. So
So now, if anybody, even though the mask mandate's ending next Tuesday, um, if anybody says, "Well, you should be wearing a mask," you should say, "Well, I watch CNN, and Dr. Leanna Wen said one-way masking works. So if you wear your mask, you're protected." And all you have to do is say, "I watch CNN," and maybe they'll back off and be like, okay." So
but wait, Phil, the mask mandate is not ending in LA County. So I
that
just
we'll
want to
yeah,
make that
we'll
clear.
get to
Okay.
that. Yeah, you
Okay.
guys, LA County is a whole different world. It's like
Mhm.
I feel like if you come from LA County, I can only imagine it's once you step out of LA County into like Orange County or San Diego County, it must be like when Dorothy walked out of the house into
Mhm.
like Oz. Because
Yes.
it's just like you see people breathing fresh air, they're not wearing
Mhm.
masks, there's no one's asking you for a vax card. It must be like a whole different world to you when you step out of LA County.
It is. It's mind blowing, like how much the science changes between counties and
It
miles.
is, yeah. The science. All right, let's finish watching this clip and see what else she says.
Like anyone really is saying that no one should ever wear masks, but rather that the responsibility should shift from a government mandate imposed from the state or the local district of the school. Rather, it should shift to an individual responsibility by the family who can
Wait, stop the presses. Stop the presses. Mrs. Uncomfortable as possible at the vaccine, if you're unvaccinated, now says that we should shift from a government mandate and sanctions to individual family decisions.
Mhm.
Let's just we can let that soak in for a second. But she, a year ago, was basically one step away from saying we should round up all the unvaxxed and like put them in camps. Or what do they call them in Australia? They don't call them camps. They call them like quarantine areas or whatever.
Is
But
yeah, something some euphemism.
it's like
Um
quarantine fun centers or something. They have to give it a fancy name. Now all of a sudden she's all about individual family decision.
And it's so interesting also, we kind of skipped over it, but she also said the vaccine protects well against the Omicron variant, which someone should tell Dr. Fauci that. He's admitted that basically everyone's going to get Omicron. So
Mhm.
um, that's also false. I don't know. Everyone has a different narrative, I feel like, and they're all scrambling right now. But
Yeah, and it seems to be very coordinated, but we'll keep going because there's still a lot of narrative shifting. I like this guy's face right now. This is kind of my face when
when
I
you
hear
listen
them
to her voice,
switching.
yes.
Like when I hear them shifting so fast, I'm like, ugh.
Mhm.
still decide that their child can wear a mask if needed.
Take New Jersey, the case in New Jersey, for instance, their new case average is just over 4,000. Is that an acceptable number to do this, or are they projecting out to March 7th at this point?
I don't think we should be looking at case counts at all at this point, especially when we're dealing with a milder variant and when so many people were exposed to Omicron and therefore have at least some level of protection either through vaccination or immunity.
I'm sorry, what did she just admit that natural immunity is something that protects you from COVID?
Yeah, I guess so. And also that we shouldn't be looking at case counts.
Yeah, I no case counts are because so many people are going to get it, and I feel like this is what I said 3 months ago. If it's more
Mhm.
mild, more people are going to get it because it's more transmissible. But we shouldn't be looking at case counts. We should be looking at hospitalizations and deaths, which were not correlating with as many cases as we were getting. Um, and she's basically saying, look, a lot of people got it and they were infected with Omicron,
Mhm.
And whether it's the vaccine or natural immunity, they now have some sort of protection against COVID.
Yes. Yeah. And we've never really focused so much on case counts. It's been for quite some time we shouldn't have been focusing on case counts now. The flu every year, we care about how many people died from it, not how virulent it is. And in LA County, I know I'm obsessed with LA County, but we are basing our extended mask mandate on case counts, like nothing else. So
Yeah. Yeah, for anybody watching or listening, if you think you have it bad here in California, you don't really have it bad unless you're really deep behind enemy lines like Natalie is in LA County. So don't ever feel like, oh, things are so rough here in California. Just LA County or San Mateo County for that matter. Those two counties, really, really bad.
The key number that we should be looking at is hospitalizations. If our ICUs and hospitals in that particular region are not overwhelmed, if they're not over capacity, we can set a number, for example, 75% or 80% full, then we should be able to relax all restrictions. And I actually believe that we should be starting to, with the first restriction removed, should actually be the restriction on children. Because while for adults, you could say, well, what's the harm of adults masking when they go into a grocery store? There actually is a harm that we should be discussing of children continuing to mask. That doesn't mean that masking doesn't have its place for children when there are very high rates of hospitalization. If we get a new variant in the future that children are particularly susceptible to, we may want to bring masks back. But we should also be intellectually honest and say that masking has had a cost, especially for the youngest learners, people with English as a second language, children.
She sounds like a conspiracy theorist. I don't know. She sounds like one of those like right-wing conspiracy theorists. I mean, a cost on kids and learning,
Yeah.
and that really kids are the most affected right now, and we should take masks off kids in school because they can't learn the language and they're having trouble. And she sounds like a conspiracy theorist. She must be on those Reddits and the QAnon threads.
Yeah. And it took 2 years into this for her to say that maybe there's some damage to kids. And those are the last ones to be unmasked still in so many places. It's even the states that are lifting, they're still masking kids. So
yeah, and well, I'm sure you caught it. She's not completely given up. I mean, it's hard to go cold turkey when you're a totalitarian, right? Once you get all that power and ability to influence that many people, it's really hard to give that up. So she did say that if there's a time when it down the line where there's another variant, we can bring masks back. So there's always this kind of out there variant that maybe, I think there might be a variant coming around like the second week of November,
right.
maybe.
Yeah.
Like that might be the time when there's like another variant that'll come out and we need to like start wearing masks again. But she couldn't let it go completely. So.
I don't know if it's this clip or another one, but she has recently said, people are going to get fatigued and we have to basically save these restrictions, these measures for when it really matters. So you're right. She hasn't let go completely. And I don't know. I would be curious if she's really shifted her whole point of view on what we should do with the unvaccinated people. It sounds like she's trying to straddle. But yeah.
All right, let's see. There's a couple seconds left, and then we have, it's only 5 seconds.
With learning disabilities, there has been a cost to them. So the risk-benefit calculation has really changed.
Has it changed? Or was it always there? We just didn't recognize it.
Or are we just recognizing now it's okay to talk about it? So,
And interestingly, this is kind of a side point, but she has recently said, I don't remember who it was with, that she's concerned. She's excited to vaccinate her young children who are under 5, but she's concerned about whether we have the data for that, and we should kind of slow down. I'm paraphrasing, of course, but this is this woman who's been, the biggest mouthpiece for the vaccines. And she has some qualms about vaccinating 6 months old, which is what they're, of course, moving to do with Pfizer EUA. So, yeah, it's interesting.
So it's not completely over yet, but it does. A lot of these mouthpieces are starting to sound like QAnon people now. Oh, I guess, talking about individual decisions and letting the families decide, and all this is harming the kids. Now, this next clip, I only watched like a couple, maybe 30 seconds.
That's all you
But
can
I
handle.
figured we could watch it. I don't know if you watched it.
I did.
This will be like the first time I'm watching it in its entirety.
Okay.
So I may be shocked and maybe pausing to like react to a lot of this. This is our favorite gaggle of women who are experts on everything and they have a comment on everything. The women of The View, sans Whoopi Goldberg, because she's suspended for comments about the Holocaust. And they're talking about why all of a sudden the governors are dropping mask mandates. So have you watched this clip or?
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay, so you know what's coming. So
Yes.
I don't really know what's coming.
Yeah.
Well, this will be fun.
The White House is still in lockstep with CDC guidance that kids need to keep masks on in school. But the 4 Democratic governors of Connecticut, New Jersey, Delaware, and Oregon just announced they're lifting state mask mandates. COVID cases are heading in the right direction right now. We heard from Dr. Jha yesterday, but experts just said ending mandates will increase them, will increase the cases. So why do it now? What is the point of this? Because they're sick of it? I don't get it.
Listen.
Well, Joy, Dr. Leanna Wen, who is an expert, and she's on CNN, said we shouldn't be looking at case counts. So I'm going to defer to the expert here, which is Dr. Leanna Wen. She's the expert on this from a reputable news network, CNN. They are the truth and the science. So, Joy, I think you're going against the narrative here. I think you're going against the experts and you're not listening to the science.
And Fauci has. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Well, he's recently caught up with the science too and recognized that this is endemic.
Yeah.
And so it stands to reason that really anytime we lift these measures, the cases are going to increase. And that's kind of normal, right? That's going to happen anytime we do it.
Yeah.
There's never going to be a time when it won't increase cases. Am I echoing you?
No.
Oh, okay. I am to myself. Okay. Anyways,
We have
continue.
to look at the whole of the science, which we really haven't done at this point in the pandemic, which is not just stopping the spread of COVID,
Alyssa
but children, their
was
social
she a teen
development,
mom?
their intellectual development, their speech development,
Their mental
health. We've seen so many studies now that keeping them in masks is harming them detrimentally and putting them behind. So in those states that you named all have extremely high vaccination rates.
Yeah.
So I actually think they are in a position to start leading and saying, we're going to start moving into the next phase of the pandemic and put kids first. And you know what? If you don't want to see kids in masks, then adults, you should go get vaccinated. Protect
get
the
those
kids.
children vaccinated.
Yeah.
I completely agree with you with that, because if you look at this,
So they're still talking about the kids, and they're now all of a sudden. And this again probably has something to do with the polling, and the fact that like the suburbs, they're starting to see polling that the suburbs are starting to move back more Republican, especially like in Virginia. We saw a lot of the suburbs went for Youngkin and helped get him elected. So they're probably starting to shift the narrative back to no. We care about the kids and your kids, and we want to help protect your kids. So listen to us. We care about the kids. But I don't know. I think it may be too far gone at this point. I think there's a lot of parents who are like, we know what you did to our kids, and we're not going to forgive you for it.
Well, yeah, I hope so. Props to her for at least bringing up that the masks have a negative effect on kids, but then she tells adults to go get vaccinated if they don't like it. You know, where is the? I don't know who she is. The last time I watched The View, McCain was still on, so I don't know who this woman is. But where is the science of go get vaccinated if you don't like your kid in a mask? They don't stop transmission. Walensky, Fauci, everyone has said that now. So I don't understand people who are stuck in like May of 2020. I don't get it. I just didn't have the vaccines then, but whenever the first
well now Anna Navarro is the token conservative on the
okay.
So they have to have at least one sort of pseudo conservative on the, and Anna Navarro is, I guess, the best they could dig up. So let's keep going.
3 states, I think it's Connecticut, Jersey, and another state. Okay. A very high vaccination rate. We know that school-age kids, Dr. Jha told us yesterday, school-age kids over 5 can be vaccinated now. However, only, I think, 22% of school-age kids between 5 and 11 are vaccinated. 56% of those 12 to 17 are fully vaccinated against COVID. Therein lies the problem. You want to get out of the mask? then
Right.
get your child vaccinated. I got my 15-year-old vaccinated
What are they worried
immediately.
about? What
She
are they
wanted to be
worried about, the
vaccinated.
parents? I mean, let's talk about their fears for a second. You know, you have a child, you're worried about something. It's not political with children, I don't think.
No. How many other vaccines do they have to get? They've got to get.
They
the
get
tetanus, measles,
polio,
I
whooping
listened.
cough. Yeah.
I listened.
Ah, well, you've heard that before. How many vaccines do they have to get before they go to school? But what's the fallacy that they don't ever bring up? The difference between the polio vaccine and the chicken pox and measles, mumps, and all this stuff. What's the big difference between those vaccines and this vaccine right now?
Well, I would say how new it is, and then also it doesn't stop transmission.
So maybe they're worried about the long-term effects of what
Right,
this could
right.
be on their kid.
And I agree with that. Behar at least brought up parents are legitimately concerned. She basically writes it off, just like they've written off every concern of folks like me who think like me for the past 2 years. But at least she realizes that it's not about politics. It's genuine concern. We're never going to deal with those concerns, I guess, but they're genuine.
Yeah, we're going to acknowledge them to make you think we care about you. But let's see what Anna Navarro has to say from the conservative point of view.
Listened yesterday to Governor Murphy from New Jersey on CNN, and he got asked, you know, why are you doing this? And he wasn't talking about personal freedom. He wasn't talking against Joe Biden. He was talking about the cases have gone down, the hospitalizations have gone down, the deaths have gone down. Also, they're talking about lifting the mask mandates in school, not tomorrow, but in March. I think New Jersey is March 7th, another state is March 31st. So there's time to see how this develops with COVID in the next several weeks. If there's a problem, you know, I bet you we go back to mandates like we did before. What I will say is that I think even though the mandates might be lifted in some of these states, there are still going to be people who are immunocompromised. There's going to be people who are afraid. There's people who've lost loved ones and have the trauma. So we all have to have grace, even though the mandates may be lifted, with people who still want to wear masks and still want to take many more precautions.
Think about it, 2.5 thousand people are still dying every single day from COVID. Why are we normalizing mass death like that? My friend Medina.
What was the number? How many?
2,500 people every day, allegedly.
Has anyone fact checked to see if that's actually true? I don't. That seems like a lot.
That is what they claim in LA County still, at least. But I would like to tell Sunny that 2.8 million people every year die from obesity or being overweight. And why are we normalizing that kind of mass death by celebrating
being out of shape?
Positivity?
Yeah. And how many people die of opioids? And nobody really cares, right?
Yeah.
You know, opioids are a big problem in this country.
I don't think anyone is okay with whatever the number is of who has died legitimately from COVID. I don't think we'll ever know the real number. No one's okay with it, but again, when does the cost outweigh the benefit? How much are we supposed to sacrifice? Genuine question.
So if she's saying 2,500 people die a day, and again, we're not trying to, I guess, lessen the impact. It's a country of over 300 million people. How many people die of something else each day? Car crashes, obesity, diabetes, heart attacks. I don't know, probably a good amount. So, but this is the most pressing thing. Let's see what else they have to say. This is all the first time for me. And again, Anna Navarro, the token conservative, is fine with bringing the mandates back if something happens. So they can't give away the total totalitarianism. They got to just be like, well, just in case, we keep it in the cupboard. We need to break it out just in case. We'll bring back the mandates. It's almost like all the people who love the mandates. And I was reading the replies to Dr. Leana Wen when she was talking about this is time for us to do individual choices and stuff like that on Twitter. All the comments were like, it's too soon. Why are you doing this? No, we should be doing more. Like, I can't believe the government's abandoning us. And it was like, every comment was like, govern me harder, daddy. It was like, just everyone was like, please don't take the mandates away. We need the mandates. I live by the mandates. And it was just so sad to see that many people who were like upset that there's possible the mandates are going away. So
This was
that's
on
what's scary.
Twitter.
This was on Twitter. This was her
Sounds like
Twitter.
her.
Like she'd posted her the same sort of thing we saw in the last video, that it was all about individual choices and we should be moving away from the mandates.
Mhm.
And the whole comment thread was just like, no, it's too soon. We should keep the mandates. We should keep them more. And I was like, oh, that's scary to think that this many people are like, please, I want the government in my business as much as possible.
It is, but it doesn't surprise me on Twitter. I feel like that's the kind of people who hang out on Twitter. No offense, I'm also on Twitter, but we're just not
Yeah.
the loudest voices on Twitter.
Yeah, it's always I think it's one extreme or the other. So
Mhm.
you know, what do they say? Like only 2% of people who are on Twitter are actually super active. So you're really just getting like a very small microcosm
Yeah.
of who's on Twitter. All right, let's finish this view video because we got some other videos and we got to talk about LA County and what's going on there. So
D. Hassan tweeted that. You know, everyone knows it's personal to me. You know, we lost both of Manny's parents to COVID, but there was no vaccine at that time.
Right.
You know, we know the science now. Well, I still don't understand how we are normalizing 2.5 thousand deaths a day from COVID, and parents aren't vaccinating.
But when
their
what's
children.
We got to ask what percentage of those are unvaccinated, because they reserve their individual liberty not to take that vaccine. I think 99.2% of deaths right
Yes.
now are
But
unvaccinated.
why? What
So
about parents not vaccinating their kids?
Well, what we're seeing though, and this is the problem, is in these articles we read, there are some experts, not Dr. Jha, that said there could be an uptick in transmission. That shouldn't be what we focus on. What we should focus on is the severity of the illness the kids get. Because if the kids end up, which has been reported with Omicron, my own nephews have both had it, less than 2-year-old and an 8-year-old. It was essentially a bad cold, like a little bit like flu. Like
you want to take the chance?
you can't say that. You can't say it was essentially a bad cold. I feel like that's misinformation.
But that was true before Omicron too for children. I don't understand their mystification at why folks don't want to vaccinate their children.
They're just like, I mean, I did it to my kids. Why doesn't everybody want to do it?
Yeah. But to be
I
clear,
guess
I
it's
mean,
the-
it was true before Omicron for children, not for everyone. I understand that other variants were very bad for some people. But Omicron, from what I understand, is like a bad cold largely for everyone, including children, who it's been a bad cold for this whole time. So
Yeah, and it is funny how they're so mystified by all this. They're like, I just don't understand why don't parents want to do this? Are they not good parents?
maybe if they got an actual conservative on there, he or she could explain it to them.
And maybe I mean, I'd love to see like Candace Owens sitting in the middle of them, but it might just turn into a shouting match between all 5 of them. So let's see what else we have to say.
Chance for your kid to be the exception and your kid to
At
be
this
intubated?
point, with what I know, and again, listening to people like Dr. Jha, I absolutely do.
Yeah, see, I don't want to take the chance with my kid. I don't want my kid to be the one part of the 1% that is intubated and dies because I don't give her.
But there's
a
also
Can I
vaccine.
ask you a question? When a kid goes into school, and all these kids have to be vaccinated in order to be in the school. They have to have the measles
Yeah.
and that triple thing that they do with the
The MMR.
MMR. They have to have their polio shot. So why is this any different?
I
It
don't
will
know.
probably
It's
the
on
argument.
politicized.
The
You know the
argument is that it
I
moved
know,
to
but the
market
answer
so
is not
quickly.
correct. That it's
Right.
it's
Not all at
political.
once,
Now there's
ladies.
states
We
who
can't
wanna
hear you.
ban all vaccine requirements. I've seen, some proposals on that because that's now the result of this. I also think we have to think about the teachers, and I think that when
Yeah.
governors, when politicians are making decisions like that, they've got to count on the teachers unions. They've got to count on the school boards. They've got to take into the consideration the opinion of the parents, doctors. This is not a decision that should be made from up high on some, in some Capitol building in a state capital.
But see,
But
Alyssa
one-
just said that it's because it was rolled out too quickly. But you
That's-
also said that Trump is responsible.
Well, I sort of I'm trying to dissect what Anna Navarro just said, that it shouldn't be made by one person on high. Correct. I don't think a lot of these decisions, especially in a state like California, it should come from one person. We saw how disastrous that was with Gavin Newsom just kind of being king of California for almost a year and a half, but at this point, it's almost 2 years. And rather than just saying like, oh, let's let the local counties figure it out. Let's let the local school boards figure it out, what's best for them. which the rumor is that's what his endemic plan is for next week, is that he's going to shift a lot of the responsibility back to the counties, which doesn't help you because the county is as the worst it possibly could be. So it's interesting. She's saying, well, it shouldn't come from like one governor. Right. None of this stuff should come from one governor. It should come from your representatives. It should come from local representatives. It should come down to the people who can manage your local resources better. So I guess I sort of agree with Anna Navarro, but I don't think that's what she was going for. Maybe I heard something different. But I don't know. Let's finish this out and get on to the next one, because we can talk about my home state of Jersey.
Responsible for warp speed. And that was poor messaging, because this science has been around for decades.
Well, and I think it would have been extremely helpful if in the final days of the Trump administration, he explained, because a lot of this is the Republican base that is not trusting the vaccine and doesn't believe it. But I will say, there is a left-wing base as well that is very anti-vax. But here's the thing. Children we know are highly less likely to get seriously ill from this. I personally, I'm not a parent yet, would consider getting my kid vaccinated. But if you are someone who's afraid to get their child vaccinated, then tell every adult around you to, and that lowers the risk substantially.
And everyone I know has been vaccinated. I don't know people who haven't been. And if some of them might be in my family, but I haven't seen them.
Well, and
why am I not surprised that Joy Behar, in her circle of people, anecdotally, doesn't know anybody who's not vaccinated? Why am I not surprised?
Right. And also, I keep saying this, it doesn't stop transmission. So this quick here, she wants you to be like Stacey Abrams and tell everyone else to mask up while you take off yours, because that's how it works. So you cannot vaccinate your child and then tell your entire community to vaccinate their children. I don't understand where this science, I'm not a scientist, obviously. I didn't do well in science. So where does this come from? This whole idea of we can have one person who's not vaccinated, that's okay. And everyone else has to be. It doesn't make sense to me. I'm sorry, it doesn't stop transmission.
Well, it's because a lot of people just like to argue from their anecdotal point of view, where they're just like, I mean, I don't know anybody who's not vaccinated. And I like all the people who are around me. So therefore, those are good people who are all vaccinated. And I guess all the people who are not vaccinated, they're icky people who I don't know anyway. And I probably wouldn't hang out with them anyway. I'm sure there's plenty of stories
on Trump's messaging, warp speed. I'm sorry, we're taking a long time on this view clip, but there's just a lot here.
There's a lot to unpack.
The phrasing warp speed. That's why we're all still so vaccine hesitant, is because of a man who's no longer in office and hasn't been for a year. It has nothing to do with the current administration and how they handle this approach to rolling out vaccines. It has to do with what's called warp speed.
And it has nothing. I mean, yeah, it's a Republican majority of people who are not for it, but it was developed under Trump. And even Trump has told his supporters to take it, and he's gotten pushback, and people have been like, no, we're not with you on this one. We're with you on everything else, but we're not with you on the vaccine. So it's sort of it has nothing to do with Trump himself. It's just, I don't know. It comes down to what people value, what they think about their lives, how they want to, have their families and the responsibilities. So it's not as black and white as, it was Trump's saying warp speed. I think the fact that he said warp speed was the way to be we're trying to get out of this pandemic as fast as possible. This is the best way to get out of this, is get these vaccines, which is what a lot of these celebrities and experts were saying a year ago. Once everybody gets vaccinated, we can get out of here. We're done. That didn't happen. So I think that's probably why a lot of people are very upset with what's going on. That's probably why the poll numbers are tanking for the Democratic Party and Joe Biden. It's because they told them for a year. They said, go get your 2 shots, go get your booster, do all these things, mask up, follow our rules. And people are still getting sick. People who are boosted, double shot, everything, they're still getting sick. And they're waking up and going, then why did I do all this?
Yeah, I would be upset too. I am upset for my own reasons, even though I haven't complied with a lot of it. I think what women like this or people like this don't realize is that, and the reason they've never been able to fight this perceived medical misinformation and vaccine hesitancy is they don't realize that most people with integrity, their thoughts and entire point of view doesn't shift with who's in the White House. You know, I didn't want the vaccine when Trump was in office and I voted for him. I don't want the vaccine now. It doesn't have anything to do with that. And that's why these people will never reach the vaccine hesitant majority because they have no idea what they're fighting against. It's like implying that my vaccine hesitancy comes from Joe Rogan or something. It doesn't. And they will never address the real, genuine concerns, just like they're not in this clip. They're saying, oh, yeah, it was quick. My parents are worried about it, but they're not addressing that. It still comes back to Trump and all this superficial BS.
Yeah, and I think at this point, you look at the numbers and go, the people who are holding out are going to hold out. That's it. Like, it's been a year and a half now. That's it. Like, we really don't have any other. Well, it's almost a year, right? When did they start rolling it? Yeah, it's been almost a year.
I think December 20. Yeah.
Yeah, like the first lady got the vaccine. So, but like the big rollout was like a year ago.
Yeah, you're right.
At this point, a year later, if you're still holding out and you still don't want to get it, that's it. Like, you're just not going to get these people to do it. Like, they've survived a year with, I mean, you're living proof that survived a year. They've figured it out. They've gone to places. Maybe they don't go to places, but they're still here and they're like, I'm not doing it. So this message of like, well, just go out and do it. And we need to get more and more people vaccinated. It's like,
no.
I think you've reached your limit. I think it's over. Like, I think you've got the people who are going to do it, and the people who aren't going to do it aren't going to do it. That's it.
The damage has been done. I don't know how many more people would have ddone it if they had messaged this differently and it hadn't been so political at every turn, but they made it political. I can tell you, I never would have gotten it. I'm not an anti-vaccine person before this, but I just was never going to get this. But other people might had approached this at all differently and actually listening to folks, but they didn't. They're still not. And they're trying to convince people to get their booster, even as they're trying to convince folks like me to get their first shot, which doesn't make any sense at all.
Yeah. So I think at this point, they're still scratching their heads going, I just don't understand why people won't do it and why the numbers aren't going. Because I think you've reached critical mass here when it comes to how many people are going to take it. That's it. Like, it's been a year. The people who wanted to rush out and take it, people who were sort of on the fence may have went one way or the other, but the people who don't want to get it are just not going to get it. So no matter how many carrots or sticks you throw at them, they're not going to change their mind. So all right,
I will withstand all of these women on The View. I can promise you that.
They're not going to bully you into taking it.
Hold out. No.
All right, we got 10 more seconds, and then we'll go to Phil Murphy.
People were unvaccinated and they believe things that aren't true. And we've got to get the adequate public health messaging to them. It was great that you guys had the doctor on yesterday, but women who think it's going to hurt their fertility, like these just aren't true things. And we need to break through that with public health messaging.
Okay. So that's their final thing, is that it's obviously messaging. Messaging is what's the problem. I had never heard of this site before, savejersey.com. So
me neither.
As someone who grew up in Jersey, this must be a new site, because New Jersey's #1 source of conservative news, commentary, humor, and analysis. I'll have to send this to my friends back east to see if they know this. Oh, see, now I hear the echo.
Yeah, I just tried to do something and make it happen. So I won't do that. I just hear my echo.
All right, let's see what Phil Murphy has to say about why he's dropping the school mask mandate.
As you know, most states do not have mask mandates for schools. Have you seen evidence that these mask mandates have been necessary, that the spread and mortality rates in states where they didn't have mask mandates were far worse than in places where they did have mask mandates, like New Jersey?
Yeah, I mean, New Jersey is clearly the place I know the best, and God bless our precious kids, no matter where they are. Please, God, they stay healthy and stay alive.
God bless our precious kids. the language is changing. It's the whole we care about your kids now. We
Yeah.
really,
Yeah.
really do. We really care
Mhm.
about your kids. Don't forget that when you go to the midterms this year. Democrats care about your kids.
Alive. There's no question that masking in our schools since the beginning of the school year has been a very smart public health step. I think we've had just over 2,600 cases of students with COVID positive since the beginning of the school year. That's out of 1.4 million kids. So it's a pretty stark piece of evidence, I think, that this has absolutely worked. But you got.
Wait, so what was the number again? I don't know why I blanked on. I was looking at his Rutgers helmet in the background. It was something like-
I don't know the number because I was
Let's
focused
see.
on the fact that he was also focused on cases yet again instead of hospitalization or death. Right.
Yeah, that's okay. I want to go back and hear what he says.
Kids. So it's a pretty stark piece of evidence, I think,
Wait, hold
positive since the beginning of just over 2,600 cases of students with
2,600.
COVID positive since the beginning of the school year. That's out of 1.4 million kids.
20. I'm not good at math, but 2,600 out of 1.4 million seems like a small percentage.
Yeah, but he's attributing that to his mask mandate since the beginning of the school year, and because he's done so well, now we can take them off.
Got it. Okay, so he's saying the fact that they did this is why the cases are so low. Or right?
Yes, which is
Okay.
what every Democrat I think is saying now. That they basically cured COVID and stopped it. Not
So
cured,
it's a
cured.
pretty stark piece of evidence, I think, that this has absolutely worked. But you got to meet the moment. You try always to not undershoot the moment and put lives at risk, or overshoot the moment and add more stress and mental health challenges to the system. And we think this plan of a month notice is going to get that as right as we can.
Yeah, but have you seen data that definitively proves that these mask mandates have worked? I mean, the numbers you just presented are impressive, but are they different from the numbers in states where they didn't have mask mandates?
Yeah, again, I know Jersey, Jake, the best, but I'm highly confident, and I'm sure our health officials could say it definitively. There's no question they've worked. There's no question getting vaccinated, getting boosted, and wearing masks indoors have all been positive public health steps compared to the absence of any of those things in the old.
So the answer is no. He can't cite to anything else. And kudos to Jake Tapper for kind of calling him out on it. It must suck to be Jake Tapper on CNN because he's like, I'm trying to be an honest journalist on here, but I just, when you have people like Brian Stelter who's running around with his man birds, it's got to be tough to, and everybody falling and getting axed off the network for sexual harassment or something. But
yeah.
Phil Murphy, he can't name one he can't say, oh, well, we did better than Texas, or we did better than Florida, or we did better than all these other states that didn't have mask mandates for kids. And this is the proof. The proof's in the pudding that we did 2,600 out of 1.4 million, and I don't know, Florida was 500,000 out of 1.4. I don't know. Like, you can't even cite to that. So
yeah, and it has nothing to do with folks having natural immunity or us being this far into the pandemic. It has to do with the fact that they've been masking this whole time. Again, there's no proof.
Yeah, and that's one of the biggest fallacies that drives me nuts is people are like, well, it could have been a lot worse if we didn't do these things. And you're like, yeah, but we don't have a control group to show like what would have happened if we didn't do this. Like,
Yeah.
you can't say it would have been a lot worse without knowing what the opposite was. You can't prove that. So
You're right. Well, we also have the fact that children aren't dropping dead in Florida. I assume, I haven't been, but they don't have mask mandates in schools. Am I incorrect? So, again, I don't know how you can say that this is because you had mask mandates and now all of a sudden it's okay to take them off kids when it's been okay according to the CDC's own study last May, mask mandates don't do much. And now we have them saying, oh, cloth masks don't work, which is what most of the kids wear. So what is the narrative? I'm confused about what the narrative is. I actually don't understand. It's all just a jumble to me. I feel like they can't get their story straight, other than the story is, thank God for what we did, because it could have been worse.
Yeah, and I figured they would probably trumpet the whole, oh, we did such a good job and all these measures worked. And look, we did such a great job. And that's why we're out of it, because we did such a good job. Not, well, the poll numbers are crap. And, the order came down from our supreme leader, Barack Obama. He said, you guys got to get your act together and you're going to get sloshed in the midterms. So stop doing unpopular things. But some Democrats don't want to give up on unpopular things. And LA County says they're still weeks away from lifting indoor mask mandate. And this is from the LA Times. Los Angeles County is probably weeks away from lifting its indoor mask mandate. And the latest could ease the order by the end of April, unless a new coronavirus variant poses a threat. There are 2 triggers that could result in LA County easing its indoor mask mandate. Barbara Ferrer announced Tuesday, and she's not really even a doctor, right? She has
a
degree
PhD in social welfare, ironically.
Okay, so she has nothing. She's not like a health expert.
No.
Okay. The first is the county entering a quote moderate rate of transmission, in which cases fall below 730 a day for 2 consecutive weeks. We anticipate being able to get to moderate transmission if we can continue to drive down the rates as we are right now on our cases within a few weeks, but we're not there yet, Farrar said at a Board of Supervisors meeting Tuesday. LA County is averaging about 9,500 cases a day. You guys got a long way to go if you're going to get to 730.
Yeah. Stop getting tested. Just kidding.
Yeah, just stop going. Everyone just stop going. It's like when you're kids and like the teacher doesn't show up and there's like the kids are like, if we just don't say anything, like we could leave, like we could all get out of here. Yeah. And there's always that one kid who's like, I'm going to go tell the principal. And he's like, no, don't tell the principal. That's what's happening.
But I'm not offering medical advice. I'm not telling anyone not to get tested, but I'm just saying.
But if you have no symptoms, don't go get tested just for giggles. Just don't run down to your local testing spot and be like, I'm going to get tested. I'm going to get my cat tested. What else did it say? The second the second condition that would trigger the lifting of the county mask order, Ferris said, is for 8 weeks to elapse after children ages 6 months to 4 years become eligible for the COVID-19 vaccine. 6 months?
That's what they're trying to do with Pfizer right now. They expect it to happen next week, an emergency use authorization for 6 months to 4 years old, which is probably very exciting for everyone in the clip that we watched prior to this at The View. But I just also, where does that, why not 7 weeks after or 6 weeks after or 9? Like, what does that mean? Also, the shots don't stop transmission. I'm sorry, they don't stop transmission. We're just making things up right now. And also the Super Bowl is happening, like we spoke about. They just voted, I think today, to continue the state of emergency. And I don't understand how many things have to not add up before people, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm just not seeing it, maybe people really are fed up, but it's so obvious right now that none of this is based off of anything real or substantial.
No, well, I mean, a PhD in social welfare, I don't think she's just kind of making this up as she goes along. And 6 months is, I just feel like that's really, really young to be injecting a kid with something we don't really know too much about. I don't know. I mean, sure, if you want to call me QAnon crazy or whatever, and I have my tinfoil hat on, 6 months old, like 6 months old is like when kids are usually, what is it? Like, I think it's like 6 months, they can get all their shots. If there's any moms in the chat who can clarify this for me or not, I think it's like usually you want to protect your kid as much as possible. You don't want to take them out before 6 months because then they can get all their vaccines that they know are safe and good. But like at 6 months, as soon as they are eligible, you're going to be like, let's just get them that vaccine. And we still have no idea what the long-term effect on like developing babies is.
Right. I mean, I'm not going to call you a conspiracy theorist. I'm not a mother yet. Again, I'm not a scientist, and I'm not offering medical advice, but I don't understand why risk that again for something that does not stop transmission. At one point in our nonsense, there was the narrative of, oh, you do it, you wear a mask at school or you get the shot to protect grandma at home. But now we know that's no longer the case. And so a 6-month-old, how many 6-month-old have died from COVID? Honestly, how many?
Yeah.
So what is the point of risking it? But again, as much as I love this nation, we are the only Western nation that have masked children as young as 2, the only one. The WHO doesn't even recommend it. And we've really sacrificed the children for some reason, and we continue to do so. And now there's going to be pressure on these parents, if it's not in fact forced in many daycares and the like. There's going to be pressure on these parents to get their 6-month-old vaccinated so that LA County, we can stop taking off masks indoors for the vaccinated, of course, never for the unvaccinated. It's just, it's so unethical, in my opinion, all the way around.
6 months is really young. Someone said in the chat, Angela says in the chat, there are some they can't get until 12 or to 18 months. So you want this shot to leapfrog ahead of these. And there's some you're not even supposed to get till you're like a year and a half old.
And with all of the ways, as Joe Rogan pointed out, how misinformation now is just accepted information 8 months later, which folks like you and I have known for a while, with all the ways that things have changed as science does, again, I would hold out. I'm not offering advice, but I don't understand why we just accept this idea that obviously this is safe and effective for 6-month-old. And so you not only should get it, but you have to get it for your 6-month-old, and that'll never change the safety or effectiveness. Why would we believe that at this point?
Angela says we don't give flu shots at 6 months. So you don't give flu shots, normal flu shots at 6 months, but they want to give COVID shots at 6 months. Let's see what else. Ferrara. I keep wanting to say Ferrara or something, but it's not Ferrara. I will say unequivocally that we should not be lifting the masking mandate when we're reporting thousands and thousands of new cases every day. Now, Ferrara, babe, I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but we shouldn't be focusing on cases.
No.
The expert, Dr. Leanna Wen from CNN, the most reputable news network out there, and one of the most reputable medical experts, said we should not be focused on cases. So the fact that you're focusing on cases, you're going against the science and the experts. So someone should tell Farrar that she is spreading misinformation and that she's not going along with the science. Correct?
I absolutely agree. And according to the CDC, every Southern California county is an area of high transmission, not moderate transmission right now. And I know she's not in charge of San Diego or Orange County or Riverside, but they're all lifting the mask mandates. So I don't know. Seems like it's not about the cases or the science or the high or moderate transmission to me, but that's just my opinion.
Even like San Francisco and Bay Area are like at least lifting. They've already lifted their mask mandate before the 15th, where they're like, well, if you're vaccinated, you don't have to wear, because as long as everyone's checking the vax status at the door, we don't have to wear masks.
If you're boosted, right? I think
that's right. If you're boosted, yeah.
And it's only in some indoor places like offices and gyms where you spend a long time. And if you were going to wear a mask, I guess it would make more sense if you were going to wear it indoors for a long time as opposed to the grocery store. But from what I understand, you still have to wear one in the grocery store, whether you're boosted or not. I could be wrong. It's only in certain indoor places, and it's only for triple vaxxed. So.
Got it. Because the definition of fully vaxxed is changed.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see what words of wisdom she finishes on. From my perspective, there's no way this is a forever. This has an endpoint. Is there an endpoint? I don't think so, according to you. If nothing else, it's 8 weeks after there's approval of an early child vaccine. But I think we're going to get a lot faster if we continue with the decline. The issue is the decline continues if the protections are in place that really help us limit transmission, and we remove a lot of those, as we've seen in the past, we tend to see numbers go back up. I don't know. I'm still wrapping my head around why the linchpin is very young babies getting the vaccine.
Yeah, and what happens if 8 weeks after it's been emergency authorized, again, not FDA approved, but emergency authorized for no emergency for 6-month-olds. What if the uptake is not what they desire? Does it then change? Or is it just 8 weeks after it's EUA, whether anyone gets it or not?
Yeah.
I don't know. It doesn't make any kind of sense to me. I don't know why I can't take off a mask now indoors. I have to wait for a 6-month-old to be vaccinated.
Yeah. You coming into contact with a lot of 6-month-olds who are just
Right.
incubators of COVID virus.
Yeah. And, they're all saying, oh, it's not forever. It's not forever. Like, Fauci saying it's going to end within the next few months. But there's really no substantial concrete reason. I mean, I appreciate that she's at least giving hard numbers, but they still make no sense. There's no substantial concrete reason of why it can't end now. It doesn't make any kind of sense. If other counties are doing it, other big cities are doing it, why can't we do it?
Yeah. LA's just got to be different. Speaking of Fauci, we'll hop on this article real quick and then we'll end with the Oscars. Fauci says full-blown pandemic is almost over, and this is from Yahoo News. Fauci discussed his idea of the virus trajectory with the Financial Times. He did not mention a specific month. Well, yeah, I mean, what would he say? Or season, but told the paper that these restrictions, including mask mandates, could end soon. He said, it will depend on who you are. But if you are a normal, healthy 30-year-old person with no underlying conditions, you might need a booster only 4 or 5 years.
That was my favorite part of the article, that last line. It gave me a lot of hope that I only need a booster every 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, and as if people are going to be like setting their clocks to like they'll have their iPhone like a reminder. Hey, it'll be like, hey Siri, set reminder for booster in 2026.
Yeah. Or you might not need a booster at all, which again, not giving medical advice. But aren't they encouraging everyone to get their boosters now? They're not saying, oh, if you're 30 years old and you've already gotten the first 2, you're fine. So it's just interesting. And also it's interesting to note that if you go into any search engine and type in Fauci, go back to normal, it comes up with a wide array of results that almost seem comical, because he has said we will go back to normal at this time or this date or in spring of this year so many times. And all of those times have passed and it has not happened yet in my part of the world. So,
I mean, baseball players get hits more than Fauci's been right with his predictions. There's another quote from him where he says, we are looking at a time when we have enough people vaccinated and enough people with protection from previous infection that the COVID restrictions will soon be a thing of the past.
Great.
So what did he just admit there?
Natural immunity.
Yeah, that sounds like something Fauci has really rarely ever talked about, which is natural immunity.
Mm-hmm.
So he's now saying, well, you could have got vaccinated, and if you have natural immunity, that's good enough. And we should be getting to a point where enough people are either vaccinated or have natural immunity. What does that sound like as well?
What, herd immunity?
That sounds like herd immunity.
Yes.
Which I think is it was a dirty word, but now it sounds like they're fine with herd immunity.
Yeah. Yes.
Because they weren't counting, even if they were like counting how many people got vaccinated and they were saying, oh, 60% of this state is vaccinated. You would say, okay, well, how many people have natural immunity because they got it and recovered? We weren't counting that as part of the whole overall picture. Now, all of a sudden, they're counting how many people got it and recovered.
Mm-hmm. And with Omicron, I mean, we must be at herd immunity, but that would just be my my thought. And yet still the push all the time, even from all the things we've looked at almost, to be vaccinated. It's still this obsession with as many people as possible, if not everyone, be vaccinated. So,
Yeah.
I know.
But it's just interesting. It's just it's interesting to hear the language that they're saying about natural immunity. It's interesting to hear Fauci talk about or allude to herd immunity because of
Yeah.
both natural immunity and vaccination, which is stuff you couldn't talk about before. One-way masking, which I feel like a lot of people were like, that's common sense. Like if you wear a mask, you're protected. Doesn't matter. But it's a lot of stuff. The language has changed. It's like I got whiplash this past week of how fast all of this is. I mean, this article is
Yeah.
just from yesterday, and a lot of this stuff is literally this week. Like that's how fast the narrative changed. So if you don't
You're right.
think like this is all coordinated at like one central location, or at least like the higher ups are like, hey, we have to really change what we're saying about this because things look really bad. Like it's just all of them at the same time, like change their tune. It's unbelievable.
You're right. Yeah. Yep.
And I don't want to say it's like, I'm not going to go as far as say like it's the lizard people and the Illuminati, but like, when the higher ups are like, hey guys, this is really bad. We need to change our messaging. It's a little too coincidental that they're all changing their tune at once about all this. Especially with
Yeah,
how
I
bad
mean,
the
it
polling
makes
numbers
sense,
are.
if they want to get votes. I imagine even the most COVID obsessed religious person would be a little bit tired at this point, even if it's just tired with folks not getting vaccinated because they've pinned so much on us. I mean, how long does this go on for?
Mhm.
It makes sense that they want to get back those poll numbers.
Sarah Connor said they realize people aren't buying into the COVID nonsense. I can actually bring this up. So now they're trying to dial back. The next big power grab will be in the name of climate change.
I've heard that.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, it's all about the Overton window and like social conditioning and how much people will take and how much people will do. And I think this showed that there's a good amount of people who will just listen to whatever the state says and do their marching orders. But I also think they figured out there's a lot more people than they were expecting who were just going to stand up and go, no, we're not doing that. So
Bittersweet. I hope that's true. I don't know. Good and bad.
yeah.
I see a lot of people just going along to make their lives easier, and I understand we all have different concerns, but so many people, I walk in the store, they've got it under their nose or like hanging off, and it's like, why don't you just go in without it at that point? It's like we're all playing this charade and a charade, and why don't you just go in without it? But it's like, no, we have to just go along to get along, and those are the people who kind of bother me the most, frankly, as opposed to the ones who genuinely believe it, at least genuinely believe it and go for it and do it fully. But I think more people need to just be like, nope, I'm not going to pretend anymore. Just having something halfway on my face, or it goes for so many things in this, but the mask is obviously the most visible. So
it's the most visible
Yeah.
sign of compliance. Yeah. And I think, especially down here in San Diego, I've seen a lot of non-compliance. I went to Sprouts the other day, which I hadn't done in a while. And Sprouts is like one of the most granola
yeah,
places.
I've been
Like,
afraid to go since I stopped wearing a mask indoors. Was it?
I went and it was like, I don't know how it is in LA. It might be different
Yeah.
people. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of different people up in LA.
Mhm.
But like 40% of the people were not wearing masks and they were just like, screw it. We're
That's
just,
great.
I was like blown away. I was like, wow, Sprouts. Nobody said anything. Everyone was super helpful and friendly. Trader Joe's was one of the biggest shocks to me. Like when I went in first time without a mask on,
I've heard they've changed
walked up,
because Trader
the
Joe's was very
guy,
serious about it.
Trader Joe's was like, they had people at the door. They
Yeah.
were only letting a certain amount of people in. They were like, you have to have a mask on. Please put your mask up. Now it's like you walk in there with no mask. I went to the cash register. Guy was like, did you try this new seasoning that you're buying? I was like, nah, I haven't tried it. He's, oh, you try it on this. It's really good. I was like, oh, cool. Thanks, man. He's like, all right, have a great day.
I love that. I love catching the eye of like the one other person. Usually it's just one, if there's even one, who's not wearing a
Yeah.
mask. And I mean, I want to be clear. I wore one indoors for over a year because I am a minimum wage worker. I was before I lost 2 jobs overnight in March of 2020, like so many people. I didn't want to make their jobs harder. But at this point, you know, it's clear that it's not going to end in LA until we end it. And so no, I'm willing to go in and possibly make your job harder. I don't mean to. I use the self checkout if I can. You know,
Yeah.
I'm not trying to get in anyone's face, but it has to end somewhere. And it's so nice. I'm embarrassed when I go into stores. I'm embarrassed to have a conversation with someone. I don't ask any of the workers for help or anything because
Yeah.
I never know who's going to say something to me. And even the smallest errand becomes like this huge thing of civil disobedience. And it's empowering, but it's also just kind of like, okay, I'm just going to the grocery store. Like, can it be normal for 2 seconds in Los Angeles?
Yeah.
I had an announcement made about me and Ralph's recently for not wearing a mask.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Did
So-
they single you out and said, like, you know, girl shopping for cereal, please put a mask on?
A friend and they said over the intercom, we have 2 customers in the store without a mask. And I don't know for whom the announcement was made. No one came. The security guard saw us and didn't do anything. But yeah, the announcement was made, and that was relatively recently. So if you want attention, basically, just come to Los Angeles and you'll be the most interesting person in a store if you just go in without a mask, and you'll get all the attention you desire. You get off social media and just come to a grocery store in Los Angeles. What's that?
If you like being the center of attention, go to a grocery store in LA. I would imagine it's the same in San Francisco. If you go to a grocery store in San Francisco without a mask, you'll probably be the center of attention for everybody.
Yeah, for better or worse.
Yeah, not so much down here in San Diego. Lucky, but yeah, it is a little empowering. But you're right. Like when you do that first, like you cross the threshold, it's always that like immediate feeling of like, okay, here I go, going in without a mask on. And then you go in and it's like that first 10 seconds. And then you're like kind of looking around, making sure no employees like running up to you, being like, sorry, you got to put a mask on. And then you like, once you see like 4 or 5 other people who are walking around without a mask on, you're kind of like, oh, okay, I can relax now because they didn't chase these people down and you know, beat them with a sack of quarters or something. So
Yes.
I guess
And
I'm
it
okay.
encourages other people to do it, I think. I'll notice like when I go in without one, eventually I'll see them in the aisle later again. They'll have it underneath their chin. And I'm not saying I inspired them, but I might have inspired them. So I think the more we see people do it and get away with it, you're right, because I'm always nervous every time I do it, and I've been doing it for a while. The more we see people get away with it, the more people will just do it. And I think it's more important than maybe people realize.
Yeah, it definitely makes a difference because I think if people see other people doing it, if they go to Trader Joe's and they're like, hey, I was in Trader Joe's and I saw 5 people without masks on and nobody gave them a problem and they checked out and they weren't like publicly shamed or had rotten eggs thrown at them. Then they're like, maybe next time I'll try it. And then it just kind of like perpetuates itself where it's like, and I think a lot of people are just, a lot of employees are just over it. They're just like, I don't want to be the mask police anymore. They're like, I'm just over it. So,
yeah.
All right. Final story of the night. If, you know, one of my favorite sayings is that the elites hate you. Oscar attendees won't need to show COVID-19 vaccination proof. Natalie, is that a problem in LA that you come across that you can't? I mean, you can get into like basically anywhere in LA without showing proof of vaccination, right? That's not an issue.
False. No, it is an issue.
You personally haven't had any problems getting into places without a proof of vaccination, right?
No, that is not true. I had a problem with us even hosting the Oscars last February, or whatever it was. But yeah, now we're going to them again this year in a state of emergency, and then they don't need proof of vaccine. So
they said nominees and presenters and stars will gather March 27th at Los Angeles Dolby Theater to celebrate the best and brightest in film. I saw the Babylon Bee had, you know, they just always kill it with the headlines. They said a bunch of people will get together to give an award to a movie no one's ever seen during an award show that no one's watching. I was like, that's a good way to sum up the Oscars.
Yep.
The Academy of Motion Pictures and Arts and Sciences will ask attendees to show a negative PCR test or a negative rapid antigen test on the day of the ceremony. So you're not getting off scot-free, but you don't need to show proof of vaccination to get into the Oscars.
Yeah. Meanwhile, we're talking about firing thousands of sheriff's department employees because we refuse to
4,000,
allow
yeah.
them to show a negative test, which I still disagree with. I don't believe in this test or vaccine thing because, again, the shots don't stop transmission. But at least I have to credit the Oscars for the fact that if we're going to go the testing route, everyone should be tested. It should have nothing to do with the vaccine. So I get, but I don't understand why we can't do this for people going to their freaking jobs. Why can't we just test them all? Or test them before they go into your restaurant if it's such a huge issue? Because yes, that LA City has implemented vaccine passports. I don't know how many places are actually following through with them. From what I've heard, they just kind of scan it because they're all, hourly wage workers and they don't care either. They don't know what to check for. But I have been asked for a vaccine card at a bar that I used to go to before the world went insane. And so, yeah, it is a thing in Los Angeles. And I imagine none of these folks will be wearing masks. So it almost seems like we can just, I guess, test everybody if you really want to, which again, I have problems with. But at least let's go that route to try to get back to some semblance of normal. If these people can test and test negative and not wear masks and be all near each other, then why can't we? It's almost like the elites can do stuff that we can't do.
Absolutely. Well, even the Super Bowl, you don't need a vaccine to get in the Super Bowl. It's just a negative test, right? I don't know what the rule is for the Super Bowl.
I think with the Super Bowl, I don't know if this is SoFi Stadium's rules or what, but I think it's that thing of negative test or vaccine card, from what I understand, unless they changed it because of the controversy. I heard they might have changed the rules because of the stuff at that championship game and push back against that. But from what I read, it was a negative test or vaccination, which again is not following the science. So,
yeah. So I guess for big special events like the Oscars and the Super Bowl, you don't have to have a vaccine, right? That's not important.
I guess not. And I have heard of people getting fired from the movie industry. I'm a former actor, so I have, compassion for these people for not being vaccinated, all that. I have friends. So I'm not saying, none of these people are vaccinated, but I doubt a lot of them even are of the elites. And that's the point that people don't realize is other people don't have to follow these rules. They're not being carded. I doubt that any of these folks who are invited to the Oscars, if they go to a bar in LA where I'll be asked for a vaccine card, you're not going to card J-Lo for her vaccine card. I mean, we're all fighting for these rules that other people don't have to follow. And this is right in our face, just like it's always been in our faces. They had the Oscars last year when we were still allegedly in the thick of this. So I'm sure all the workers too will be masked up. And I'm sure they had to be vaccinated. So it doesn't make sense. I don't know that for a fact, but I do believe probably all of the servers will be.
Well, it does say in this paragraph, the Academy mandates that its own employees be vaccinated. Yeah. So the employees of the Academy have to be vaccinated to work at the Academy, but to attend the Oscars at the Academy, that's fine. You don't have to be vaccinated. But you're right. It is becoming a different set of rules, and I think I don't think Fox, when they showed that montage of the celebrities at the NFC Championship game, realized the firestorm they were going to start because they showed Jessica Alba on the field, nary a mask in sight. Cedric the Entertainer, who at least had a drink in his hand, but no mask, not anywhere to be seen. Magic Johnson, obviously. I mean, they showed celebrity after celebrity after celebrity just not wearing a mask, and there was nobody said anything. Oh, Leo DiCaprio had his on like he was doing the chin diaper thing. But it is, you make a good point that they're not going to ask like Leo DiCaprio, excuse me, Mr. DiCaprio, can you show us your vaccination card? I mean, I'm sure he could whip it out, but like you're not going to. But if you want to work there, if you're going to work at the Academy, you're going to have to be vaccinated. So it is a different set of rules. And I think that's one thing that people are frustrated with, is that if you're rich and powerful, you don't really, COVID probably hasn't affected you as much if you're rich and powerful. You've gotten by pretty well. So
Yeah, which is what a lot of people have been trying to say since the beginning of, yeah, this lockdown, all of this in LA, especially in California, it affects people differently. And it's nothing new that the elites have different rules, that fame and money buy you. I mean, I'm not pushing back against that. That's a fact of life, especially here in Los Angeles. But why are regular folks like me pushing for additional rules? I'm just fighting to go back to normal, to go back to square one and zero. I'm not fighting for this huge revolutionary change, but I don't know. We seem to be shooting ourselves in the foot and trying to make sure that our neighbor's vaccinated. And yet we consume this media and this entertainment and we watch these movies where these people have different rules.
yeah. Oh, it's like the running joke of like, we're all in this together. And then they're, doing this live, or their tweet from their 32,000 square foot mansion up in the hills with a pool and a gym and a home theater. And it's like,
Right.
hey guys, just stay home. Like, we're all in this together. Like, just everyone stay home. And it's like, well, yeah, it's easy for you to stay home because you have like all the amenities you need, and you can order whatever food you want, and you can basically stop working for the rest of your life because you have so much money. Um, the rest of us can't just stop working and not do anything. Like, the rest of us do have to go back to work eventually and make money and pay rent and pay bills. And we can't just sit in our apartments all day and wait for the government to say, oh, you can come out. So,
And if it weren't for the truth, the simple fact of what you're saying, I would not be sitting here talking to you right now. I would not have been red pilled. But it
no.
is so true what you're saying. I genuinely felt that I went from a hardcore leftist to where I am now because of that genuinely felt experience of, I understand people are dying from the virus. I understand it's bad for some people, but these measures in Los Angeles and California, they are harming me and my family and my community in so many ways. And we're trying to squelch one tragedy, creating another tragedy over here. And that hasn't mattered for 2 years and counting in Los Angeles. And it's turning people off. People like me. I've met a lot of people with my same timeline and my same trajectory of whether they identify as conservative or not, just moving away from this insanity, because so many people have been harmed by all of this. I laugh about
Yeah.
it, but it's really a tragedy in so many ways, which I don't have to tell you or your viewers.
Yeah, it is. And I think one day we should have you back on and talk about your red pill journey, because it is interesting to watch. And I think there's probably thousands like you who in California who went from one end of the political spectrum to the other. And I saw recently you've picked up a love for the Second Amendment, and so I mean we can talk about that. So I mean you're like a rootin' tootin' like little Republican conservative gal now. It's like
Yes, and
you're just like,
it's all genuine, it really is, and I never would have thought. I told you before, I think I voted for Obama twice, and I drove 80 miles round trip to vote for Clinton in 2016 because I was registered in a different county. Like, this is so far from anywhere I thought I would be. And it's not, it's not an act. It was genuine, and it was really brought about by his response to COVID. So yeah.
that would be a fun that might be a fun that'd be a fun podcast to have, like a round table of like all the people who've been red pilled over the past 2 years, who went from like far left to like now they're completely on the opposite end of the spectrum, and why they came here. So that's a good idea for another podcast. But
I'd love that. There are many of us. Anecdotally, I have met many.
well, if you're anything like Joy Behar, that's all you need to know, is that your group of friends is the totality of everything that's happening in the world, right? If your group of friends is doing X, then
Fair
everybody
enough,
should
fair
be
enough.
doing. Yeah. But yeah, I think that would be definitely a fun podcast to have, is the amount of people who have, because I think it's interesting. I say that a lot on my lives and podcasts, is that people think like, oh, California's never going to change. I'm like, I don't know. There's a lot of people who were deep blue loyalists, and now they've come completely 180 and they've changed their minds. So there's a lot of open minds right now. And Where
It's
we're
true.
whether we're
And
gonna
even when you what go ahead, what's that?
No, go ahead.
I mean, I was just going to mention that even when you take away COVID, which I understand the Democrats are trying to do, um, there's still so much radicalism on the left that I think they're still losing so many people, whether they go to, the GOP or not. So it's not just about COVID. It's not just about not wanting to wear a mask or get a vaccine. It's so much insanity on the left that I felt forced out, I don't even know
No.
where they are anymore. So whether you identify with every single conservative or Republican point or not, you feel more at home on this side. So
Yeah.
I think the Democrats have a bigger problem than they realize, and it's not just going to be unmasking, their states. So
Yeah. That's what I agree. I think there's a lot of lingering issues, and I think the damage is already done for the Democrats, and they might be in the woods for a while. So hopefully there's other chances for Republicans or libertarians or something else to rise up and help take its place. All right. Well, it's been almost an hour and a half. Flew by because there was a lot to talk about.
yeah.
It was a great conversation as always. Any final thoughts on the great narrative reset or?
I didn't. I don't know what to say at this point. I'm afraid to say anything. Maybe I'll see you the next time the science changes, or when it finally changes in Los Angeles. But I do believe that tides are turning, and so keep the faith.
Yeah.
I
It
see
doesn't
it
turn
here
as
and there.
fast.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't turn as fast as we like, but it's definitely
Mm.
turning. I think, the people who've been kind of pushing for change for the past 2 years, we're definitely starting to see it. So,
Mhm.
all right. With that, we'll wrap this episode. As always, thanks everybody. There's always an audio podcast of this. If you like this, make sure to like, subscribe, all that nonsense. And yeah, we'll see you on the next one. And Natalie, we'll see you. Hopefully, maybe we'll see you on that Red Pill podcast where we have the Red Pill Roundtable. See, I already came up. That's a great title, the Red Pill Roundtable. I'm gonna start working on that. So,
Sounds great.
all right, we'll see you
Thank
then.
you.
Night, everybody.